we're going to do some crosswind approaches. And so in this case, if you notice the wind line, I've got that set at kind of out of the northwest, 7 knots. Let's make it a little bit more extreme. And so the wind line now is going to be from the northwest. I'm going to be landing with the runway on my right side, and that's called, we call landing mountain. So at the entry point, I'm going to get out upwind of the target. And let's just quickly draw out what it normally would be and look at the comparison. So on a light wind day, something like this is a pretty good pattern for a light wind day. But today, we have to move our starting point up the wind line, right? So that's in this direction. So I'm going to start about here, and downwind leg will go about like here. I'm going to turn, and it's going to be a slightly shorter base leg than normal, and then final approach. So moving the pattern points into the wind, and then the final approach, I'm going to have to angle my canopy's yaw axis, the heading, so that I'm moving in the direction that I want to. In this case, it's parallel to the runway. So let's do it. Test the theory. See if we can make it work. And while we get started here, I'm going to turn on both landing point and ground position, and I'm going to get rid of that screen. So let's get started here. Okay, under canopy, take a break as soon as you open. Unstow your toggles consciously. Make a turn looking into your turns. Make sure there's no traffic. And I'm going to go ahead and just bring it all the way around into the wind and do a quick ground winds check. I can see a canopy down there. So facing into the wind, that's the glide of my canopy. So given the wind speed, I'm down to about a 1-to-1 glide ratio if I was to add brakes. So right now I'm pulling down the brakes, slow in the canopy, slow in the canopy. So now I'm not moving very much, but I am moving forward still. So I have to go to almost deep brakes, almost full brakes to stop motion. So that's quite helpful. 3,200 feet. So I'm just going to run a quick test here and see how far my parachute wants to go. So I'm at 3,000 feet now. And I'm just going to get myself to, how about this little circle? Let's check the altitude, 2,800. So I'm going to fly from 28, 27, 26, 2,500 feet. I'm going to turn. And if you notice, this leg is going to be a little longer than my actual base leg will be. Right? So look at that distance, right? So I have to anticipate quite a long distance. So I'm going to need to start on the other side of the runway. And so I was at 25, 24, 23, 2,200 feet. So that's the distance that I traveled on my downwind leg. So not terribly far, but relatively. And 23, 22, 21. All right. And get a sense of whether I've hit this about right. Yep. Pretty close. Pretty close. All right. So I'm going to just hang out where I know I need to be. And the thing about doing a crosswind approach is that box pattern that works so well when you're on the wind line is a little more complicated when you're flying a crosswind approach. So I don't recommend actually flying a full box pattern when it's crosswind. But I'm going to see if I can kind of do it here anyway to get a sense of what's happening 1,200 feet. And okay, so right now I'm about 1,200 flying across. Now again, I have a little bit of a tailwind here. So one of the things that I can do under those circumstances, instead of going to 900 feet, I'm going to turn a little bit early, in this case about 100 feet early, so that I'm flying the downwind leg that I want. So let's see if this is going to work. Now remember, my base leg is going to be shorter than it would be on a no-wind day. And in this case, I'm a little bit high, but I'm just going to turn anyway, even though I'm at 670 right now. If you notice, I'm riding a little bit of brakes because of that extra altitude and sort of facing into the wind. Just kind of holding my position more or less, looking for traffic. Using brakes in the pattern in actuality can be a little bit dangerous. You're better off not cutting people off. Right? So 460 feet, so I'm a little high. I'm going to bring it to the outside, not very far, not all the way to the taxiway, but again, I'm turning final just a little bit high. That's all right. I'm going to turn it and let's take a look at it. Looks like I'm a little bit high for it, so I'm going to add some brakes. Now I'm facing towards the runway just a little bit. And now hands up, and I have to anticipate that my canopy is going to want to turn left as I flare, so I'm going to lean on my right leg strap, and as I flare, I'm going to look a little bit to the right. And so that put me in the right location. My canopy didn't drift off to the left like it naturally would in a crosswind landing because I anticipated it. So, well, it's complaining that I landed hard. I think maybe I flared a little bit low for what the simulator wanted, but all in all, pretty good. So let's try another one with the crosswind going in the other direction and take a look at what that. All right, and we're gonna do the same location, set the winds, and now see I'm reversing this. So it's a crosswind about the same speed as before. There we go. Upper winds similar to before. I'm gonna move my exit point over to about here. And let's look at these distinctions, right? So again, the no wind pattern for comparison might look something like this on a, well, light wind day. I still plan on my downwind leg being a little bit longer than my into the wind leg, even on a quote no wind day, because usually at 1,000 feet, 900 down to 600, there is some wind. So let's just sort of anticipate that. I can always use the rear risers on this part of the pattern if I've got a lot of distance to travel. Now today, I need to move my starting point out here, right? Because of the wind line, I move all the pattern points, at least the first two, into the wind. And now I'm going to have a pretty long base leg because I've got a bit of a tailwind, and then fly it in. So let's see what that looks like in real time. Let's hit it. Go. All right. Looking in front of me as I check the canopy. Does it work? Yep. Looking into all the turns, looking all around, getting a sense of where I am. As I face around into the wind, this would be the time to take a deep breath, relax, look down at your chest strap, take out the tail, push in, lift the buckle, and stretch that chest strap out to its fullest extension. Sit down in the harness. You kind of lift your knees and push forward on the risers to get yourself seated. Take another big deep breath and just stop for a moment. Right? Kind of chill out a little. And I'm turning on the location and I'm seeing kind of where I'm headed, facing into the wind. I don't have a lot of progress, a little less than 1-to-1 in full flight. As I add brakes, I'm at about half brakes now. So I'm slowing it down a little deeper. Now I'm getting closer to not moving at all, 2,900 feet. And okay, so I got to go pretty deep in the brakes. So that means that I have the ability to make progress into the wind, but not a huge amount. So I'm going to still stay upwind of the target. But I am going to come a little closer, 2,700 feet. And let's run a quick little sample. So let's do as a reference point the corner of this field, heading for my downwind leg, and I'm checking my altitude now, 2430. So 2330, 2230, 2130 is where I'm going to turn base leg, and that'll give me an idea of the length of my base. 21, sorry, the length of my downwind leg. Okay, so here's my turn to base. So that, you can see, looking at the corner of that baseball home plate, looking, so now 21:30, 20:30, 19:30, 18:30. Okay, so that's look at that long distance that I traveled on my base leg because I will have a tailwind. All right, so 17, 16, 15, 30. Just running a little sample pattern, why not, right? I don't always do this, but okay. I do think that for teaching purposes it's very helpful to do that. So I'm going to keep myself again on the upwind side. I'm not going to fly a full box, but close to it. So I'm going to hang out by the road, get ready for my downwind leg. I'm in a power position here to enter this pattern with a lot of ability to use the wind. So right now I'm going to sort of park into the wind, 900 feet, slowly turning myself to fly downwind, and I'm going to bring myself out here a little bit. So see the way I'm deliberately angling my heading so I'm facing into the wind a little bit, and I'm trying to get myself out to the other side of that parking lot by 600 feet, maybe even over the trees, just a little bit. Okay, 600 feet's coming up now, so I'm turning my base leg and hands up because I'm in a tailwind situation. I'm going to let it fly, let it sink, looking at the target down to my left, anticipating the angle, right? So if I was to go all the way to that windsock and then turn in, that would be into the wind, right? So 300 feet, I anticipated it pretty well. And let's see how this is working. Not bad, not bad at all. So no major corrections necessary to land in a good location. Anticipating my canopy is going to want to turn to the right. So I'm not going to look to the right. I'm going to look to the left as I flare and lean on my left leg strap. Okay, so pretty good. That's the modifications that we made worked very well. I'm going to take a quick little look here on the flight path so that we can see here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. All right, so I sort of played around here a little bit. And okay, so here you can see on my downwind leg, I deliberately angled it away a little bit because here I was a little too close to the runway. I wanted to be further away. So I angled it, solved that problem, got to the B point that I wanted more or less, and I flew this very long base leg. Again, this, if you look at the altitudes, here's 500 and there's 550. So I started my turn about 600 feet is where I began turning. By the time I finished it, I was 100 feet lower. This canopy loses a lot of altitude in a turn, apparently. And then when I turned to final, I was at about the altitude that I wanted, and the distance traveled, if you notice, was a little bit diagonal, and that was based on the sight picture, so that I can, figure out where I need to be based on what it looks like, not based on exact ground location. And that worked for getting me to the target. So let's go back in here and change this to a no wind scenario. No wind at all. And we're going to fly a true box pattern. And I think that it would be very helpful if we were to then just quickly go to Google Maps and let's anticipate that the glide ratio of this simulated canopy is about 2-to-1. So right click, measure distance. If it is 2-to-1, that means my final approach is about 600 feet long. And so there's 600 feet, right? So that's a reasonable place to turn final. And of course, you lose something in the turn. You lose a little glide ratio. Depending on how you do the turn, might be quite a lot. And so here's 600 feet for my base leg. So that's my point, kind of out there in space. If I'm going to fly a true box, a 12-9-6-3 box. And so here's 600 feet for this leg, more or less. and starting here, right? So the points that I really need to think about is being here at 1,200 feet. And if you look at this location, that's where I want to aim for in this simulation at 640. So let's try this one more time. So 600 feet. Okay, so that's where I'm going to aim to be, a little bit right of the road as you're coming in. And that's the 900-foot mark. The 600 is going to be about here, more or less. No real reference point other than sort of being over the trees, but the base leg that I'm sort of aiming for is going to be something like that. And in this case, let's set the entry point right over the top. So again, we're going to go from here out to here, right? Downwind, base, final. That should be about right. Let's hit it. Canopy check, looking forward, making sure everything looks good, looking right, turning right, looking left, turning left. Now I see where I am is right over the top, so I can kind of hang out anywhere in this area. On a no-wind day like this, you really have to keep your eyes open because no-wind days tend to increase the density of parachute traffic over the top of the airport. So you're almost better kind of staying a little bit away if you want to stay away from those other parachutes. Now I can see 1, 2 down to my right, tally 3. Where's the other ones? There should be a couple more. Pretty normal to not see everybody. There's another one down over the middle of town, 1, 2, and up to my right. There's my other one. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parachutes. Got them all, and I'm the highest canopy. So let's play around a little bit, do some drills. So how about this one? Turn and add both. All right? Turn, get some airspeed, shove both down, and then slowly level off. If you turn and then hit both brakes sharply to symmetrical, what tends to happen is it roll wobbles a little bit. So instead, I recommend turning and adding the brakes and letting it come out a little past the heading that you had when you first bumped those brakes down. So I'm turning, hitting both, and I'm going to come out a little beyond that initial heading that I was carrying when I bumped the brakes to give the canopy a chance to smoothly come out of that dive. It doesn't mean you're going to be gently bumping the brakes. If you're digging yourself out of a low turn, you definitely don't want to be gently bumping the brakes. You want to sharply hit both of them the same amount, right? Just like you would if you flared low. It's just you're going to do it while you're in a turn. Bump those brakes. Okay, so 1,900 feet, not a bad location to be in. I do have some traffic that I've gotten close to from those turns. So I want to be over that target at 1,200 feet. 1,700 now. I've got some height. So let's see how much a 360 costs me. 600, so was it 1,600 feet? And 1,400. So 200 feet per revolution is approximately what I've got. So 1,200 feet, a little bit away from the target from dinking around. So it messed up my pattern a little, and yet what you'll find is that you can fix these things. In this case, that means that I'm not going to get as far out away as I wanted to on this leg. So if I fly this leg to a slightly lower altitude than 900, right, whatever that difference was, that's going to put me out more or less where I want it to be in this downwind line. Right, so I'm kind of bending around that corner to catch up to where I would be, and I might choose to do a little rear risering. All right, 600 feet, and I'm slowly bending myself in. I'm looking at the target down and to my left, and let's see if this pattern works. You know, part of this is learning the glide ratio of the simulator, right? Your actual canopy may differ in its results. Okay, so 300 feet, is coming up now. I'm starting my turn into final, and let's see if I'm on a path to overshoot or if I've got this. All right, so I didn't do a whole lot of correction. I'm just sort of letting it fly to get a sense of whether or not it works. And sure enough, this is pretty good. And you got to start your flare a little early on the simulator. Learned that one.